there everyone and good evening. Welcome to a very special episode on Startup Central. This is the Women's Day special and we've got some very interesting voices right here on the show. You know, it's really been a long journey for women who have, so to speak, broken the glass barriers and have emerged strong in their fields. There's so much more that really needs to be done. But we have seen women which have emerged on top, and in India alone, there have been many leaders. So let's connect with some of these very inspiring women on the show. We have Vani Kola joining in. She's the Managing Director at Kalari Capital. We also have Sairee Chahal, who is the founder at Shiro's, joining in with us on the show. And we also have with us Ashwini, who is joining in, and Ashwini Asokan, who is with us on the show. And thank you all so much for taking time out and being with us. So much to talk about, Vani. I'm going to begin with you. You've really been at the forefront in understanding a lot of issues for women in the ecosystem, from surveys to initiating conversation. You've engaged women entrepreneurs very actively. Can you tell us a little bit about the situation on ground?
I think there is in terms of startups and women, there's a growing there's a growing number of women entrepreneurs, women co-founders that have obviously committed to building companies. We have some great examples, but if you look at the overall percentage, it's somewhere between 8 to 10%, and that's better than I think a few years ago when we looked at it. It was like 4%. So it's growing. But a lot needs to be done to encourage women to partake in this economic growth engine that will be very important for the next decades to come.
Now, Ashwini, you've been fairly vocal when it comes to women issues, from poor representation of women in tech events to, to a number of other issues. And from the time you started up until now, what has changed, according to you, for women entrepreneurs?
Yes and no. Yes, because I do think the fact that we're having these conversations itself is a big change from, let's say, 4 years ago or 5 years ago. So to me, in that sense, there has been a significant progress. People are talking about it, people are becoming aware of it, and the first step to any kind of change, especially the scale of systemic change that we're talking about with diversity and representation, is not possible if we don't get to the point of even speaking about it. So I think it's fantastic that women across the country are speaking out, organizations across the country are speaking out. On the negative side, however, I do see, it's a very classic kind of transition that you have to go through when you are creating systemic change on scale. And in this case, I think there's a lot of tokenism, right? You can find advertisements, you can find companies basically talking about Women's Day and just promoting their own products or just being plain insensitive. So there's definitely a little bit of, like lip service that's going on right now. I don't think that there is necessarily the things that are falling in place that are required to bring about true diversity that are happening just yet. But to me, that's part of a standard progression that happens on any topic, in any space. And so, in my opinion, it's just a question of time. Our time has come.
Sairee, I'm going to come to you. You founded a networking platform exclusively for women. On the workforce front, women still form a very small fraction. Why do you think it hasn't taken off the way it should?
Macro number of women in the workforce, and unfortunately that data is not very positive. India has been losing women in the workforce for last couple of years consecutively, and there are a couple of reasons behind it. I think the fundamental nature of work is changing, and I think that is a really significant factor to keep in mind about bringing more women in the workforce, or about looking at workforce data. But what we're also, we as India, we are a formal economy and we have a very large informal economy. So I think these two things have to be kept in parallel, and that perspective is really important. But just from a formal workforce point of view, we do know that there are more number of women aspiring to be in the workforce. There are more number of women who are educated at this point in India than ever in free India, and there are more number of women who want to have a wider set of choices and aspirations, and not just in workforce. You know, I think this includes work-life balance, this includes health and fitness, this includes relationship, this includes sexual choices. So on an average, an Indian woman has far more dreams and far more aspirations than she's ever had. But at the same time, the world of work and the world of business is fundamentally being disrupted by automation, by gig economy, by technology, by traditional farming and manufacturing slowing down. So I think this has a repercussion on the overall macro numbers that we see, but at a urban level, at the educated subset level, we definitely know women are doing better than before.
Yeah, Sairee, you've really brought up some very crucial points, and I just want to talk a little bit about where you now see women embracing women entrepreneurship. From the conversations that you've had on your platform, do you think that the kind of awareness that we've seen, have all of these options like the internet, etc., women speaking up, has all of this helped?
Right. So I think last 3-4 years has seen a lot more momentum than, let's say, in the previous 10 years. In the women in the startup space, there are more women founders in the system, but that number is still dismal, right? It's still less than, it's still in single digits, so there's nothing to write home about. At the same time, you see initiatives coming up, you know, you see government, you see Niti Aayog, there's a whole lot of accelerator mentoring ecosystem that's sort of coming along, but what we are not seeing is a lot of capital flowing to women. You know, so if you did like a gender stack of capital, women are not really sort of raising the same amount of money that men are, and you know, of course, there's a whole sort of story around that. But there are definitely more women in the ecosystem. The number is growing and the supporting ecosystem is growing, but we are not seeing the same number of deals being signed funding women entrepreneurs, or at least that proportion is not in place yet.
Vani, do you think that there is something that women can consciously do as investors? At least, you know, we know what your portfolio is about. It includes quite a few sizable bets for women entrepreneurs. So what do you think women can really do now?
I think once a year we have been trying to sponsor women-centered startup activities. Also, I spend a lot of time trying to mentor women who are thinking of either being entrepreneurs or who are currently entrepreneurs. And more importantly, we also have to go backwards, meaning that we have to go and spend some time, energy in building this as an avenue and as a confidence, as a career for women that are even younger in their engineering or in their MBA and so on and so forth. So I think, to summarize, providing mentoring opportunity for women who are at that cusp of taking on entrepreneurship, and as well as creating that pipeline by going more downstream to younger girls and encouraging them to think about entrepreneurship as a goal and an aspiration.
Central, a Women's Day special. We're in conversation with Ashwini Asokan. We also have Sairee Chahal as well as Vani Kola with us on the show. Ladies, sorry to keep you waiting. Now, Ashwini, Sairee just mentioned that capital constraints is a big issue for women entrepreneurs. Do you echo that sentiment?
If you take one look at the community there in the startup industry right now, it's predominantly filled with men. And so it's, you know, the practice of men hiring and recruiting men that look like themselves, that are from the same backgrounds, from the same caste even, from the same school and institutions, is a practice as old as probably religion itself or cavemen, I don't know. So it's something that's just natural, and since men have been in the professional industry in working for a lot longer than women, I just see that, you know, of course, it is predominantly made with men, and as a result, you know, everything from, and it's not just a question of, you know, are people just biasing against women? I think that's a little bit narrow question to ask. I think the questions to ask, especially when it comes to funding, should be around, you know, are the women entrepreneurs that are coming up, are there, you know, how are they getting access to resources? How are they being trained? How are they being, you know, because this is all essentially, at the end of the day, it's a network. It's a network of people who are sharing knowledge that they have access to, because men in their network for the past, you know, hundreds of generations have had that kind of know-how. So I think the question, and something fascinating is happening in the Valley just as we speak, is, you know, there's a group of women VCs that have started going from city to city to city, doing these, you know, fantastic founders meetups, and these are women from, you know, like Sequoia Capital, women from, you know, so many different types of VCs in the Valley right now that we speak, women who are partners that are going around the country there doing this on a massive scale. And I think, you know, to begin with, we don't have enough women VCs here in India, and I don't think that you only require women VCs to fund more women founders, but I do think that it'll help.
So yes, challenges on the capital front remain. What more do you think can be done?
I'd say broadly three things, right? Three things come to mind. First, you first need women to be a part of the technology, the tech industry and the workforce to begin with. Like we aren't even there, right? Imagine talking about having women founders in tech when the representation of women in tech and the skills that they have and the management positions that they hold and the training that they get, you know, I could go on all day long, but, you know, that itself is so far behind. And I think that that's step number one, right? Finding ways to make women part of the technology workforce, I think, is step number one. So I would ask startups across the country, look around you, look around your companies and ask yourself, what percentage of your company is filled with women? What percentage of your management is filled with women? And they are there. They are absolutely there. We're a company that's sitting out of Chennai in India, which is not necessarily the tech hub of India by any means. And yet we're an AI startup with doing something in a very specific niche field called machine vision and computer vision, and more than 50% of this company is filled with women. So it's possible, it's doable. Women in product, women in engineering, women in AI, women in so many different fields. I think it's really important to start thinking about representation across the tech workforce, because automatically you're increasing the probability of women wanting to start up companies because of their skill set. You're automatically increasing that probability. I think that's step number one. Step number two, I think, is like I was saying, you know, removing this systemic bias that we perpetrate over and over and over again, which is men hire more men, men fund more men, men of particular academic institutions fund more men of those institutions. It is a cycle that keeps giving generation after generation after generation, systemically excluding anyone that's not looking like them, or that doesn't behave like them, or that doesn't come from a background like them, and that's a problem. So finding a way to overcome bias in a very conscious way, I think is another one of those really important pieces of work that's required in the industry.
Right, Ashwini, you brought us some very crucial points. Now, Vani, the Me Too campaign, that went on to become a global phenomenon. Do you think that helped the cause in India at all?
Whether the campaign is called Me Too or something else, nonetheless, dialogue and conversations around what are your hurdles, what are the biases that you're facing, what are the unconscious biases that we all need to be more self-aware of, those conversations are very important. Having platforms where that healthy debate can happen from a resolution and from awareness, I think is very important. And we need to create what will work for a Indian ecosystem. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Me Too, which is a much broader campaign and also for a very specific situation and purpose. But since we are talking about how more women can become entrepreneurs and successful, I think we need to also create platforms that work towards making that be a reality.
Thank you, lovely ladies, for joining in today on the show and giving us a sense of what the impact has been of some of the campaigns and how women have been faring in the workforce and all that really needs to be done. It's been an engaging conversation. And here's a quick shout out to Chandra Shrikant and Rashi, but the producer of the show as well, for all the work that they do behind the scenes as well for the show Startup Central. On that note, it's a goodbye. Here's wishing all the women a happy International Women's Day.